Welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about Community Report 20, which was released on the 26th of March 2021. If you're watching this in the future, it's a very interesting report, and it's one of these reports that when you go through it first, you think, yeah, that's okay. It's just quality of life changes. Everything's going to be really good. But when you start to think about some of the features, it does trigger a few ideas about how we're going to be playing the game in the future. So let's just get straight into it. Greeting, comrades of the Soviet Republic. We passed through another week and we now can report you are more good news regarding our favourite game. Lots of progress has been made in the past weeks and we're almost ready to make the latest version available for internal testers. If everything goes well, they will be able to start their testing during the weekend, but even if it will be delayed next week, we will have more people testing in new features. So it goes to show that the devs are really moving towards putting together the next update if they're ready to move into internal testing. And I think what we could be saying is that we're probably looking at the update hitting the public test branch probably mid-April, and then what we possibly could be looking at is the full stable update sometime in May. Got no inside information, that's just my pure speculation. So moving on, changes. We have made some adjustments for GUI to allow you copying links more comfortably. We implemented one useful and broadly desired change for mines. Until now, we were not able to see how high quality the source of the mine was before you built it. In new version, the quality of the source will be displayed before you place your blueprint, allowing you to make your perfect placement. This should help colorblind people too. We're also making line spacing available for your lines. You will not need to turn on cheat menu to make it available anymore, and you will be able to manage your lines separately. Now, while I'm not colorblind, I really think it's good to see devs taking in the color blindness into consideration with their graphical interfaces. This is something that I've got a friend who's colorblind, and it's a real pain that the two colors that people are colorblind on, which is green and red, there's always the colors that devs always seem to select, danger and positive. So it's really good to see the devs taking that into consideration. I think what we'll do is just take a quick look at the picture. You can see here now that the line spacing can be enabled per line. Now, if anybody doesn't know what line spacing is, what line spacing is an option that's currently available in cheat mode. If you've got a really busy bus line with, say, 4 or 5 vehicles on, what line spacing does is it spaces the vehicles out and stops them all clumping in one bus station. So this is a very useful feature if you're running very long transport lines with lots of vehicles on. Including that into the base game will be very useful. Now, we'll just take a quick look at the mine place, although this is actually a oil rig. And you can see here it says pump jack, quality of source 40%. And that again is a very good feature, because I often get comments saying, well, you didn't really place it in an optimized location. I think having a visual percentage now will make quite a big difference. So we're just going to move down now to what is probably going to be something that some of you guys are going to love, some of you are going to hate. Me, I've got a bit of a mixed feeling on this next change. Another massive change will be implemented is connected with fuel distribution. We're adding fuel storage to construction offices, distribution offices, technical services, gravel quarries, agro farms, hospitals, and fire stations. On one hand, it will make your life more complicated regarding the number of facilities you will have to supply with fuel. But on the other hand, all the equipment stored in those facilities will be able to be refueled without the need to leave their home. But if the vehicle's workplace fuel was not available, vehicles will go to refuel at the regular gas station. I can't see me supplying fuel to all those individual buildings. I think certain of these buildings will work just as well with a normal gas station. What I can see, especially with respect to construction offices, technical services, possibly quarries and agro farms, is these are buildings that are quite often away from what you would call the centers of your economy, especially farms, because quite often they're placed a long way out. And quite often what you've got to do is put in a modded gas station or a large gas station. So depending on the amount of fuel that can be stored, let's have a quick look and see if it gives an indication here of what it is there. So you can be able to store 30 tons in an agro farm. That could be very useful. The only thing I would say is that if you're running distribution offices next to it, you're going to need a distribution office here as well. And I can't see what the fuel storage in a distribution office would be. But I could certainly see that would have advantages if you were running large farms in remote areas. That will also apply with something else like a construction office, because one of the things that annoys me a little bit when you're pushing out and expanding your economy, quite often you want to put construction offices out in fairly remote locations, especially to build roads. So the ability to deliver fuel directly to the construction office will be very, very useful. But the question I will ask is whether the vehicles will refuel if the building doesn't have power. So that's something that's going to need to be tested. The downside with all these is that I'm going to have to try and remember now to go and take off all these auto purchases every time you build these buildings. So that'd be quite interesting. And the other one that comes to mind is fire stations, which is here, because again, quite often I like to push out fire stages on the edge to cover the areas where I'm building, especially if we're laying out a new town. And one of the big requirements quite often is a fire station and a gas station, which has then got to be powered. So I think if you've got a fire station with its own fuel supply, it should make life a bit simpler. So what my conclusion from this is that I'm not going to be supplying fuel to every one of these buildings, especially when they're in an area. What I might do is, as I build out and say I'm building a new town, I may supply the fuel to some of these buildings so that they can keep them going until the gas station has arrived. And then what we'll probably do is stop supplying them with fuel in the long term. So that gives a little bit of flexibility. But at the same time, I can imagine that there's going to be a few players out there going to really hate this. Now, the last sentence in this paragraph is one of these comments which it kind of doesn't attract much attention, but when you think about it, it's going to have quite a reasonable impact. It says, additionally, you will be able to restrict delivery of mechanisms from construction offices to construction sites to transportation using trucks. Now, this is going to be very interesting because I can see two advantages for having this option available in a construction office, because I wouldn't use it all the time, because if you've got a construction office in a new area and you've got lots of roads to build and they're not very far away, there's no point using trucks. But now I can see two advantages for this option. One is, say, for example, you're pushing out into a new area, you've laid out a town and you've got lots going on in that area. What you want to do is get the paver and the roller out to the roads being built very quickly. I can really see an advantage of putting that on, say, for a road crew. Now, the second possibility is something that happens that as your economy expands, a construction office gets a little bit left behind, so that the distance between the construction office and the construction sites get longer and longer. Again, it's mainly related to moving pavers and rollers and such things. And I think the option to be able to turn around, but I think the option to set the construction office to say these vehicles have got to be moved by truck has two benefits. One, that the paver or roller or whatever you're shipping will get to the construction site a lot quicker, and of course that also applies to excavators. And also that what we'll have is that if you've got a construction office that's close to a fairly busy area, you won't have a really slow paver or roller going through holding up all the traffic. So that's the two situations where I think this new feature could be very useful. So moving on to the final section, new additions. From new things we want to mention: addition of a new helicopter for construction purposes, a new bulldozer, new heavy flatbed truck, and a bunch of Yugoslavian vehicles. Let's have a quick look at these. So the bulldozer is going to be blue. Be very interested to see what the statistics are. This flatbed truck is very interesting in the contents of what I've just been talking about with construction offices. So this has got reasonable stats for moving vehicles, because this looks like the type of vehicle that would move a paver or a roller or an excavator, because it's got this flatbed trailer on the back. And it looks like we've got a selection of what we'd call the minivan type vehicles, but until we see the stats on, especially the road speed, where we won't really know what their value of those are. So let's just move on. Then we have a new fuel power plant for you. It's a bit lower output than the coal power plant, but for the beginning, it will use oil as its fuel to produce electricity. So we're getting a new power plant. Our plan is to add natural gas later. That will be the main fuel then. The initial idea is to have natural gas as a side product of oil rigs in the future. We will see how this is realized in the future, as it will affect heating too. And there is some need for additional content to be created. Interesting. So it looks like we're going to get a new natural resource in the form of natural gas. really like the idea of, because in real life, oil fields also produce natural gas. Be quite interesting to see how that natural gas is going to be moved, especially if you kind of look at this power station. We've got oil tanks there. So it'd be really interesting to see whether if we build these oil-fired power stations in the next update, and then for some reason the natural gas is introduced, whether that would break the save game, or whether we'll still be able to use the same tanks and pipes to move the natural gas, or will it be like dry bulk goods? We'll have to have a new system to move the gas around. So that could be interesting, is probably the polite way of saying it. But I certainly like the idea of getting the natural gas from the as a byproduct from the oil rigs, because that will make the laying out of oil fields a little bit more complicated. And of course, we've also got the hint of gas-fired heating, which I really like the idea of, because one of the things that annoys me slightly is the fact that the only in-game heating is coal. I know you've got mods that use wood, but I think adding a gas-fired heating plant could be quite useful in going forward and give a little bit more of immersion in the game. So just to wind this up, we'll look at the last paragraph. If you're interested in seeing some raw footage from the upcoming update, one of our team members, Forzan, was streaming last weekend on YouTube playing the latest development version. It was recorded live and it's not edited, so you may see some of the new features there. So I'm assuming this is the live stream video here. So I think I might take a look at that going forward. And what can I say? A very interesting community report. Lots of new features. Some of these features are going to change the way that we actually play the game. If they all hit in the next update, life is going to be interesting, but I'm not seeing anything that may break the save game. So this is where I'm going to leave it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any likes, dislikes, feel free to chuck it in the comments. We'll have a little bit of a discussion about it. And so until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.